The following podcast was produced by Lisa Sidawa for her senior project through Mercyhurst University's History Department.
I'll be playing a tune called Snow Deer, and it's a square dance type of tune.
Madawaska, Maine is a small town in the most northeastern corner of the United States. Found in the St. John Valley, it is a land rich in cultural history on the border of the United States and New Brunswick, Canada. The lifestyle is unique to the area and one which is deeply cherished by its inhabitants. I spent the summer of 2013 interviewing 15 individuals who have lived in and around Madawaska for most of their lives in an attempt to paint a picture of the lifestyle here. Going forward, one will hear various clips from those interviews presenting a people who are hard-working, accepting of change, dedicated to their faith, and content with lives lived well.
I was surprised the other day we went to Madawaska how it had changed. It had changed so much. I couldn't remember my way around, But time passes, and I say I'm 102, going on 3, and I'm the only one left in my family. But you have to make your life. You have to live it. Don't feel sorry. You're lucky to be alive.
Each person I spoke with was born in and around Madawaska in the first half of the 20th century.
I was born May 17, 1928.
November 22nd, 1932.
1912.
1924.
1925.
20th September, 1960.
2/28/41.
1/17/44.
August 20, 1936.
8/28/22.
April 2, 1937.
February 1, 1935.
1940.
March 15, 51.
As is clear, there is a large age difference between the eldest and youngest of those interviewed, but the majority are of the same age. Growing up in the valley, as the area is often referred, many people have had similar experiences playing games and being with family as young children.
We used to play ball.
We played ball.
But the only thing that I find was different from when I was growing up is that the kids are not outside anymore. They're around the computer or they're around the TV but we use our lives lived outside. We were always outside. But the kids today, we hardly see them outside. Oh, we played ball. We had, when skating in the winter time, we'd make ourselves a skating rink on the river, and we went swimming a lot, and we played balls, and we played cards, and we'd do a lot of singing. We had a 4-seater swing on the porch, and we'd sit in the swing and we'd sing, and we'd watch the cars go by, and we'd play games, and if we were two, we'd say, well, okay, take the cars that are going to come from Fort Kent, the cars from Madawaska, this is going to be a fort, this is going to be a door. Anyway, we had fun. They were not games that needed money, because we didn't have that money. We were not poor, but we didn't have spending money like the kids had today. We didn't have any computer, we didn't have any TV. At the time, there was none of that. But we enjoyed singing, and we enjoyed dancing, and we enjoyed going swimming in the river and skiing, and we enjoyed our life more than the kids today, I guess.
We used to ski and snow fight, and we were kids, and we had trenches, and we made snowballs, and the next day would say, we're going to have a fight tomorrow, snowballs, and we had fun. It was raining or anything. We'd stay in the house And when my mother used to get the stove going, it was nice and warm, and we'd sit around tell different stories, and the grown-ups used to come too, and we listened to them. It was so funny. We had different stories, and we had played cards on Sunday night. There was only one Calamine, and when we were kids, we used to play. We had to tell. Was it a 10 or was it a 4? And we went a lot of when Sunday when we were kids.
Yeah.
We used to go pick berries, and we'd sell it for money. There was a company in town that made jelly and stick with
jam and jam. Yeah.
That was one way of making money. We had fun. I mean, it wasn't all labor. We were all together.
We used to play tin can and hide and go seek, and we used to play cowboy and Indian. We had a lot of fun outside.
Some children found entertainment by other means.
Oh, well, we're 10 in all, but we didn't all grow up together. Because, let me see, when I was 16, Susan and Michelle came along later. Yeah, so they were the 9 and 10. And I vaguely remember when my brother was growing up too. One brother in the middle of all those girls. Oh, I have a good memory for you. I was very, I like to listen to the adults because that's the only way you could learn in those days. So my mother and aunt, sometimes one or two, would go to the brook to rinse out the poop out of the cloth diapers.
Oh, yeah.
So I would go along and just kind of pretend I was playing, but always listening to what they were saying. So that's the way I learned things. You know, it was in the brook and the rocks, and naturally they chat about this and that. And we go visit family in Dalhousie, that's past Campbellton, New Brunswick. Also, she'd bring a book of songs, and we'd sing all the way. Well, she'd sing mostly, and some of us would join in while my father would drive. Yeah, and there are Acadian songs that I know that, like Partons la mer est belle, let us go, the ocean is nice. You know, that was, they were sailors' songs. Yeah, they were Acadian songs. So that, and then we'd get there and have fun with our cousins. And they were living in an English district, so one summer, 2 summers maybe, I'd go with my aunt to help my aunt from here, who was maybe 18 or 19, to help her other sister who was having a baby, and she had them very often. And she had 10 boys and I don't know how many girls. Her husband did not believe in birth control of any kind. He was very strict. So poor my Aunt Lily, her name was. So I would go, I spent at least one summer, maybe 2, with my Aunt Teresa in Dalhousie.
A few of the individuals grew up on farms, which provided a different lifestyle, one which stressed self-reliance and hard work, but never lacked joy. Here is Felix Lava with his take on farm life.
I was always happy because we always had something to do. Nothing was boring. We all had our jobs to do. The daughters would help mom, and the sons would help dad, and the milking of the cows, and doing hay, and farm. We planted a few potatoes, not that many acres, but yeah, we all kept busy. We had to get up early, and we had chores, and we had to milk the cows by hand then. We had it there. We had a milk route. We didn't buy milk in stores then. We delivered milk at the houses in bottles, and we had to milk the cows and go wash up and change, and then someone would do the milk house and bottle the milk, and then we put that in a horse wagon and we'd go to town, delivered all the streets with the people in town. There was not that many people then, but I can remember some of the stalls we had to make, and the customers, the nuns and the convent and the parish priests and a few other houses there. Barber, he used to cut our hair, and he'd pay
he cut our hair for that.
For the milk, yeah.
Yeah.
The trays, yeah.
And then I usually stayed at school, didn't come back from the milk. I'd stay at school. We had to bring our own lunch. There was no school lunch. We had to bring our own lunch and, at noon. And at night, I'd have to run home, change, go get the cows up in the field, bring them down for milking. Good old days. I think of that today, you know. I'm glad I was born on the farm. We used to play in the barnyard there. We used to play ball and all kinds of hide and seeks. And we had big piles of straw when we took in the oats there. We thrashed them out, and we used to go up on the barn roof and jump on the ball of hay, straw. And, oh yeah, we had fun. We always ate good. And the thing is, there was no McDonald's. There was none of that. When Mother would put a plate in front of us, I mean, you either eat it or you went without. You're going to have the same thing the night, the next day. But she was never stuck. She was a good cook, and my wife learned from her, and she learned from her mother, so I'm still eating as if.
So good food.
Yeah. There was never a problem. When there was a real big storm, Dad wanted us a horse, and he'd come get us with a sleigh, and all the kids would jump in it. I'd come in it this way anyway. And then sometime with other farmers, they'd have a plow made out of wood. They'd go up the Lamont Avenue. There was the Peltiers over there, and they had a stone plow made out of wood. And they would make 2 tracks, let's say, like a sled. And after they'd gone by, we'd go sliding there with our sleds. We were caught in there, we couldn't get out of it, so
all the way down?
Yeah, all the way down.
That's a long trip down.
Yeah, from past the drive-in down to almost the main street.
That's a fun ride.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was no cars to bother us.
Yeah. And now we hear from Candid Daigle Sedlick about her experience growing up on a farm.
For us kids, it was fun because we worked at a very young age. 5 years old, we had jobs to do, even gathering the eggs or feeding the calf, or and then of course picking potatoes. We started to pick potatoes at 5 years old. We'd pick the small potatoes. They would sort the potatoes as they picked them, and we would and then they would use those potatoes for feed. They would cook them and feed the pigs and the hens, and so. But then as we grew up, we did more work, but we were a group of kids that we always played. We always had something going, and we got along. Our parents taught us to get along and work together, play together, respect people. So that's how we grew up. But we enjoyed the farm. Well, we played kick the can and hide and seek, and we had all these places, the potato house to hide, the barn. We'd climb on top of a beam to hide. Nobody would think that we had climbed there. I would climb, but I couldn't ever come down. So it was things like this, and we played, some days the girls with our neighbor, Velma, would play house. You know, we each were a different person, and things like that. So we had a lot of fun.
She still appreciates the farm today, and always did when visiting home as a young adult.
We didn't want to go in town, or we didn't want to go visit. We wanted to stay home. And my mother was happy we'd come. She wanted to show us off. She wanted to go to her brothers and sisters, and we'd say, no, we want to be here. So there was a little conflict. And we wanted to get off the merry-go-round and just enjoy what we missed, and what it made us realize that we had a good bringing up. And it was nicer. It made us appreciate our younger years, that we had really something good here.
Here we have Medirain Sirwa commenting about life on the farm and how farms stayed in the family.
And so she was a farmer's wife. She'd go gather the eggs and garden. A lot of, in those days, that you had to preserves. You had to make preserves. And there were no stores except for this guy, this old man, they called him a Jew, a Jewish man, would come by and sell them stuff or trade. You know, if they had a chicken or something to give him.
Yeah.
In those days, the money wasn't, how would we say that? Well, we could buy a lot of stuff for 5 cents. Let's put it that way. That's why we had a 5 and 10 store at Newberry's. We called it the 5 and 10 store. Because you could really buy something for that amount. Yeah, that was it later when I was older. Yeah. And then we picked all the wild fruits. Wild strawberries, wild raspberries, wild blueberries, when they were in season, naturally. Yes, and then my mother would take care of those too, preserves, or, you know, bake with them, or if there was something, my father would go on the farm, and sometimes he'd say, oh, you noticed that the blueberries were ripe or something.
Oh, yeah.
So then we'd all head out there with our bowls, and but we got some sunshine that way. And then when the potatoes were, in those days, they didn't have some kind of poison for the, there was some wild, what's the French expression, something growing in the potatoes. So we had to go, when I was a teenager, between the rows and pull out all those wild turnip. Well, maybe there's another name for it, but they were not turnips, they were just the flowers of turnip. Yeah, we have to go there. And so we had to deal with my father that we'd work in the morning, and in the afternoon we could go to the beach at the lake. That was the deal there, and it worked. I remember maybe milking a cow once for sure. I know how to do it. Maybe they had run out of electricity, or, you know, he had a lot of cows, and he was all rigged up to electric, you know, those, you didn't have to do it by hand. I don't remember I ever went to get the cows, though. That was done. We had the hired hands, and they would go and do other errands on the farm. But my grandfather was the first one who bought a tractor in our, let's say, vicinity there, about 5 miles wide. And so, naturally, my father drove it.
Yeah.
But at night, in moonlight, he'd go work for other farmers.
Oh, okay.
And his father didn't know about it.
Oh, okay.
So when he found out about it, it was a big fight.
Yeah.
Because my father, well, he said, I need money to buy some dresses for my wife. In those days, the children would work for their parents just because they would eventually get the farm. But they didn't get any, they didn't have any salary or anything. And then we had to help work at the harvest, potato harvest, and it was all by hand, and I wasn't too good at it because I had small hands. And my sister was better, but then our father would promise to pay us, and he didn't. When it came time to pay us, and he didn't pay us. So we were getting wise up there right after me. She'd order in scissor book COD. So when it came, you had to pay. So that's the only way she got new clothes.
And now, here are a few other farm stories.
It was hard work, but it was still a happy time.
That's what got us going. My wife also, she was brought up on a farm, and that's what got us going for work without hesitation and without criticizing. We had to do it. That's it. We did it, and most of the time it wasn't always good, but we managed.
Growing up on the farm, I didn't work much.
No.
Well, those who worked had to get up and milk the cows and feed the animals, and besides that, they had a garden.
Okay, yeah.
And that was a lot of work, you know, weeding and everything. It seemed that my mother was constantly out there, and she'd have us come with her because, you know, she would weed and take those things away. Well, we could do that, so we do that. And besides that, I didn't do much, really.
And I was only about 4 years old. Well, we used to live on a farm, and like I said, I was the baby, and my older brothers were much older than I was, and my sisters, and I used to follow the men in the barn. So, and my brother would say, Annette, the horses are going to trample over you now. You better stay home. But every day I'd hide and I'd go in where the horses would come in. So one day he says, I can't train you not to be here. So he put me in a barrel. You know, there was an empty barrel in the hall, in the entrance of the where the horses walked in.
Okay.
He stood me in there, and I just napped down in there, most probably. And the horse came and put his head in the barrel, thinking that it was wheat or oats or whatever. And I'll never forget that as long as I live. I was so scared.
Yeah.
I never went back to the barn. One night, my brother said, tomorrow morning, you two girls, you better get your suitcase ready. We're going to Florida. So we prepared all our stuff, you know, all excited, and we were leaving. And the next morning he says, oh no, I was just teasing. So we cried and cried and cried for days. So that's how we entertained ourselves right there.
Education was an important part of childhood in the valley. Many of the individuals I spoke with had a story or two about their schooling.
The most exciting thing when I was 5 was going to school. That was exciting because I had to take, in those days we didn't have a bus. We had a team of horses. And there were older boys, they were awful. So the man in charge would have them walk me. Walking back up the lane as a punishment,
Oh, God.
But they'd wind up having fun, you know, throwing snowballs and, oh my God. They were supposed to be, you know, in my eyes, I was a good little girl. In my eyes, they were awful. First year I went to school, came into town, Vangerin School.
Okay, yeah.
And then they built a schoolhouse almost next door to our house. So I continued there until 4th grade. And then at that time we moved to Madawaska. So I continued here. In St. David it was a one-room schoolhouse. Yes, and I used to like that very much because you could listen to, let's say if you were in 1st grade, you would listen to 2nd grade, then get 2nd grade wasn't hard. So it was, you know, we had heard it all before. And I thought it was a good system because whatever we had heard, we would repeat, stick with us much more than just flying through.
When the table was cleared, my mother said, homework. So we did our homework, and we were like, I mean, there was, we'll say 6 or 7 of us around doing homework, and we learned a lot from each other. And I remember that I didn't like history, and you know, today that's my favorite. History.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I know we had fun when we went to school. We had this teacher, and she had a boyfriend, and his name was Pierre. We were always teasing her with that. We'd ask questions, and we had fun with that. She liked, so she didn't get better.
Not everyone enjoyed school.
Plus going to school, which was not too appropriate then. We started, my oldest sister and I, we started in those back settlement schoolhouses or consolidated schools, they call that then, I don't know. And it was next couple of neighbors down the road from our place. And short story, I wasn't too good at learning catechism. And one morning I went to school and the teacher asked me a question and I didn't know it. I never looked it up to begin with. And my parents were illiterate, so it was needless for me to bring the catechism home and try to help me teach the catechism. So I went back to school without learning anything. Well, he says, I'll keep you after school, he says, and I'll teach you something. So my sister also. So I told my sister, Joan, I said, you know, after lunch, we're going home. We're running away from school. So the school was made. There was a the shed back of the school
Yeah.
with restrooms. The girls on one side, the boys on the other, and the wall separating that, there was an opening about this wide, about a couple feet wide, high, which was big enough for us to crawl through. Okay, my sister. But on the left side was a shed, a wood shed. So the plan was, I'd ask to go to the bathroom. A couple minutes after, my sister would ask, and then she'd crawl through that opening, that crawl space, and we'd run through the shed and around the building. And my grandparents were living about half a mile down. And just as we went up the hill, about halfway to my grandmother's, they found out that we were missing. They got out on the porch with the older boys. There were some eighth grade boys then. There was an 8th grade schoolhouse, actually.
Oh, okay.
And we heard them yelling, "You come back here, come back here." Kept on running.
Yeah.
I had my sister by the hand, and I think at times she wouldn't touch the ground.
Oh, wow.
we ran to our grandmother, and my grandmother happened to be in the years before a grade school teacher, and my goodness, she says, "What happened to you? You've been run by a bear or what?" And I told her what happened. She didn't laugh too much at first, but after a while, it was a real comedy story.
Yeah.
And I went back to school. The school teacher never mentioned anything about it. He let us be. That's probably why we didn't learn much in religion, but
oh well.
we got through till the age of 2nd grade. I went down to the town school. They started busing back settlement kids. I was in 2nd grade. My sister was in 1st. But to prove I didn't learn much at that little school, I had to repeat 2nd grade in town. That's the story of my life about education.
Yeah.
I was never much of a person to like studies, or unless something I like mathematics and English. We had then in Grandal, the school in Grandal, we had 1 year a certain series of books. In other words, study like English and French for the first year. Well, the classes were 2 grades in each class. Okay,
yeah.
You started with 1st and 2nd, 3rd and 4th, and so on, 5th and 6th. And 1 year we'd have English and French. The year after, the next year, let's say that this was in the 1st grade. 2nd grade that year would have still English and Latin. Back then, Latin was a thing going because of the religious teachings, religious possibilities that we go for to seminaries, or so that's how they worked it out. And like the Latin, I wasn't too impressed at that. But French, we learned quite a bit of French as what we know now, but whatever we can do in other words, to help ourselves through French reading was helpful. And we had, I think, 4 years of that during our grade school French. But the Latin, I let that go. The local priest, the parish priest in Grandal wanted me to go down for study for priesthood in Bucksport. I like the woman too much for that.
I didn't go to school a minute before its time. But I'd be swinging the tree, and then I'd hear the school bell, of course, grab my books and run, and I'd make it just to the tail end of line, but I was in line with the class to get into the school.
My husband went, he was 7 years older than me. They had, Montagne past Lakeview Restaurant. Each street, they call that a row, or that would be a French word. They each had a little schoolroom, so they never mingled with people that were living on at the other street, about a mile further. They were only mingling with their own cousins. Mostly they would start houses on the same street. Yeah, and then his parents thought, well, maybe in those days it was a very big honor to have a priest in the family. So they thought, well, he seems to be pretty bright. I think we'll go send him to high school in the town of Setagat, and in case he wants to be a priest, or he wasn't up to their level. You know, they had learned more from professional, real teachers. Then the roles, like I told you, the streets, a girl who had graduated from high school was qualified to teach. So she just would teach only what she knew from the books, you know. While in Seneca, the nuns were there, they were more educated, let's say. So he wasn't up to their level of 7th or 8th grade, so he skipped school. So and they were paying for him to stay there at his aunt's, right across from the Seneca church. Well, so when they found out, they said, okay, no, you're not going to go to school anymore. So he went to go work in the woods there, lumberjack, earning his living.
Everyone I spoke with was bilingual, speaking both English and French from an early age. In fact, it was in school that nearly all of those interviewed learned to speak English. At times, this caused problems, because they were told to speak English at school, but French at home.
I don't remember when I could not speak 2 languages.
They weren't allowed to speak French.
Oh, no.
Well, everybody was like that. So they had a system, I guess. It seems to me that I've always known how to speak English as well as French.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you when did you start speaking English. I didn't know.
But then, see, the teachers were French, but they had to speak English only, you know. That was, the government tried to eradicate French, let's say, around here. They wanted us only to speak English and on. Yeah, so that was a big hassle.
If we'd be caught talking French in school, they'd make us copy. I will not speak French in school.
Oh, gosh.
Sometimes we had to make about 100 lines, depending on how the teacher would prefer you.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's how it got. We got to the point where we couldn't use our French at all, except during French period. But it was just every other year. But anyway, I think it was kind of a little stupid because of it was. I think this is what you call discriminating as far as our language, because this was our native language. But they decided on doing that.
I didn't feel it because I never got caught. The boys would get caught. The boys would rebel so bad, and they'd be the ones punished. But the girls, somehow we got away with talking French. Because the more they were saying, don't do this. And the parents, my parents always knew better. Church was in French. The home was in French. It was always the two were important. The two was. But can you imagine, we teach 12, 13 years of English to a child, but French we teach them 2 years. How do we expect them to, when French is really hard to? So a lot of us, we could read it and speak it, but don't ask to write, because you know it's very complicated.
We couldn't speak French at school at all. That was a no-no with the nuns. And on the playground, you get caught speaking French, and you had to write so many times, I won't speak French, or maybe 100, 200 times. And one morning I got in late a little bit from the milk route, and it was in the winter, and the sun was waiting for me at the top of the stairs. You know what a medical center is in town?
Yeah.
Well, the church was downstairs.
Oh, okay.
And the upstairs was classroom. And then she was waiting up there for me, and she started rubbing my ears. I thought they'd fall off.
Oh.
Yeah, but no, it was tough then. We didn't have any ball points or anything like that. It was ink. Well, you had to dip your pen in ink.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy school too much, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Because Mom and Dad, Mom spoke a little bit of English, not much, and Dad, no, not all. And so we'd come back home and speak French all the time. Really, the only English I really learned, I had English in high school, but it's when I went out traveling.
Yeah.
And since I've retired, I'm going back to French a lot. So.
But not too many people spoke English. I'm going to tell you, in those days, I started school in 18 years. I started school early. And if you were caught speaking French in school, I mean, you had a detention slip. You were supposed to speak English because people were French, and they wanted the people to talk English. Even though we had French classes, we had which I took also. But was mostly English at school.
But at home we spoke French because my parents were Canadians, both of them, so they spoke French, and we stayed with that with them. But among us kids, we'd speak English once in a while.
I don't ever remember learning English at home at all. At first, you know.
Yeah.
So but we were lucky because our teachers were also French. They taught us how to speak English, but it was very difficult for us because we would come home and the teachers would say, now practice at home, speak English. Well, we didn't do that because our mother didn't speak English, and whenever we would speak English, what are you saying? You speak French, you know? And we'd go in school and they'd say, speak English. So we were like, as we grew up, it was always a problem. We were punished at both ends, at the house, at home, and in school.
Oh gosh.
And they made us write in school, I shall speak English, or sometimes it depends. They say, I shall not speak French, or, you know, but the ones that were more positive, the teachers, they would say, I will speak English. Okay. You know, 100 times you had I had 3 pencils that I had strung together, and I'd do three lines with 1 pencil. That's how often that they punished me. Okay. So, but I am very happy that I learned the 2 languages because it came in very handy for the future. Yeah. What we do as when we meet in the families with brothers and sisters, we start in English and we end up in French. And if we talk about the farm and with our stories and laugh and stuff, well, most of the time it's in French. See, so we have never lost our French in my family. And I guess people say, well, we have an accent. Well, I say that's me. That's how I am. So, and after I was in Connecticut, I went to a speech person to try to learn to lose my accent. And she taught and asked me questions, and she says, I don't want to change you one bit to continue your life the way you are. So I was very happy with that. And you know, in French, there's no H. It's mute. So, we say the instead of the. I don't know. I don't pronounce the H. So, well, it's not my fault.
As the interviewees turned into teens and young adults, some of their activities changed. Many attended dances, and as school came to an end, most started looking for careers.
You know, Saturday night is supposed to be for dancing, mostly. We'd go across where my mother, in the general neighborhood where she grew up, and they would have, when they build a house or a barn, mostly a house, before the section of the rooms, they'd have a party.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a dance, you know. Because it was a nice, like a dance hall practically. This was the custom then. And I don't know how old I would have been there, but I remember, well, not falling in love, but really having Google eyes for the banjo player.
Drive the Jitterbug in the Waltz.
Okay.
Yeah. And the songs were Time of Elvis. Okay. That would be in the 50s, I believe. Huh? I love to dance.
When I was in high school, sometimes we'd have let's say a Christmas party. I'd invite friends to our house, but like I said, it was a big house and conducive to parties. And my mother was agreed that it was a good idea, naturally. Otherwise, it wouldn't have worked. So we'd plan a party, me and my sisters. And we'd also go, my father owned a beach. The water was very shallow, so I never learned to swim. I'd float on a tube, a tire tube. And I'd invite my friends to come over from town. Some friends would come and sleep over in the summer especially.
Music and dancing was a large pastime for those living in the valley. No one knows this better than Lionel Doucette, who spent a large amount of his younger life playing the fiddle at dance halls.
Well, it was then like it is today. If they need a some musician to dance. To give you an idea of what I went through as a musician, I started playing when I was a teenager, 16 years old, in a local dance hall where Roland's Rendezvous is today. That was Sears Cozy then. And I started playing there. And back then, the type of music that I'm playing, the style of music I'm playing, was the only thing around. You didn't have any rock and roll, you didn't have any... And every dance in the dance hall that was danced was through fiddle, keyboard, and the electric and the guitar accompanying. And if you'd play a regular square dance, old-fashioned waltz or slow waltz or a jive or jitterbug, they called that, and they had that. Another one was a Lady of the Lake where they get in line and they interchange when the caller mentioned. So anyway, that was all the only kind of style of music, style of dancing there was. And back then, they'd get married not too late in the morning, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and they'd dance till noon, stop for lunch, then they'd start over again after lunch till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, stop for supper, start back at 8 o'clock till 12.
Oh.
I'd be playing. I'm surprised that I'm still got some joints on shoulders and elbows, but that was a lot of work. I mean, you started playing that early in the morning till late at night without being paid too much, but it was enough for a whole day, for a whole wedding like that. We're being paid $15, fiddle, guitar, and keyboard. $15 then was much better than most days, most wages today, actually. But the guy that owned the hall was kind of a money tight, and he wouldn't pay us anymore. He wouldn't even pay us a drink or whatever. There was a restaurant in the other room. He wouldn't even give us a bottle of soft drink. But it was his way of doing it, I guess. He retired rich, and it was still working.
Time did not go to waste for those in the Madawaska region. Once you graduated high school, you went straight into the working world.
We had 12 kids in the family, and in those days, times were pretty hard. I went to the school here in Madawaska and graduated. And after graduation, I was on a Friday, I graduated. So I get back home, and Dad says, well, now, son, so you graduated, now you got to find work, because we had a big family, and we needed money. And so that means by then my high school days were over, you know, and I know what's coming ahead, you know. So I had one of my aunts that was home at that time, and she says, Ron, he says, I'm leaving Sunday back to Connecticut. So I says, Tom, if you got a place for me, says, I'll go with you. So pack up your bags, and Sunday I'll pick you up. So went down to Connecticut. The following Wednesday I had a job. I was in Watertown, Connecticut, and I had a job. I stayed in Connecticut for about 3 years. I worked for the U.S. Time, which they make watches and clocks. And I was a clerk at that time. So I got tired of that. And then I came back home, and I tried to work down at Fraser's here. They didn't have any work in Fraser's. So I was going out with a few of my friends up there, and they said, why don't we join the Army? It sounded pretty good, you know. So there was 5 of us at that time, and it was August 14, 1948. The 5 of us went down to Vanguard and joined the Army, 5 of us from Madawaska. And did my basics in Fort Dick, New Jersey. My time was done, so I worked for the Valley Times. So with the Valley Times, I stayed there 32 years with the Valley Times. I was superintendent of the printing shop when I was, my time was done, retired at 62.
For a lucky few, college was in their future.
I never in a million years thought I'd be an elected official myself. Girls did not do that. Luckily, we had nuns teaching. And then I had the example of my older sisters. That there was another world. And I had all these women teachers. I saw what women could do. And of course, my mother was saying, I remember one time I was having a conversation with her, and I said, and all of a sudden, before she was married, she had never been to Stockholm. She had never, I said, boy, I've had a different life than you. And she says, I made sure of that. what happened was Mom said if course we were going to go to college. There was never any question, which I thought that was, 3 of my friends went to college.
Yeah.
3 of my whole class, the girls. That just wasn't done. You were expected to go graduate 18, get married, start your own family, and go on with your life. But I love that concept. And I remember being teased a lot because I ended up, I went to teach in a Catholic school French in Massachusetts for a year and a half. And then I decided for sure I wanted to complete my college. And I for sure wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And when people around here would say, you're going to be an old maid. How come you're not married yet? And when I finally thought of the expression, I'm still a schoolgirl, that kind of quieted that down. I'm still in school.
Yeah.
What do you want from me, And I did get married eventually at 26. My husband was 30. Because it takes a while when you go to college, starting your career.
Of those interviewed, Judy Parody was an anomaly when it came to getting her college education. While many of the women interviewed furthered their education, often for teaching, the majority of men explored fields which did not require schooling.
At that time, nobody went to college, and there's only a couple of us that went through high school. Mm-hmm. I'm one of those lucky ones, I guess. And the others had to stay and help on the farm. Okay. And my sisters kind of helped, and we got married early. Then the farm wasn't big enough for 3 of us, 3 boys. So my father, I thought it was kind of tough on me when I graduated, but he said the farm was too small for 3. And he made me the biggest favor I ever had. And I started on a job working for the state as a potato inspector. And I did that for 36 years. I went an extra year to help them out. But I've traveled. Come spring, in the winter, it was okay to inspect potatoes, but come spring, they had nothing to do. And the old inspectors had priorities, so they stayed in the state of Maine and worked on different things. But my job took me out to Elizabeth City, North Carolina, and drove down there at 19 years old. And then I'd work North Carolina 3 weeks and come up to New Jersey from the eastern shore of Virginia for 3-4 weeks, follow the crop up to in New Jersey. Stayed there till fall, then come back to Maine. I've done that for 4 years. If you came from Aroostook County, naturally they put you on potatoes, nothing else. And because we had more experience, And finally I got enough seniority in there that I didn't have to go downstate. I got on the Rogaine potatoes here in the field, foundation seed for all the farmers. And there was a state program, would be 3-4 guys that would go out in the field and pull the virus, dig the potatoes out and carry that. And done that at the end of the field. The farmer would pick it and get it dumped somewhere away from the field so they wouldn't spread no disease. After that, I'd go down in southern Maine on string beans and work the string beans in Farmington and Corina. And then I'd come home probably for a day or 2, and then I was called back on corn. I had to go to Freiburg and Gorham Canning Company and work different. I went to Pittsfield, New Hampshire, 1 year on corn because they had no inspectors in New Hampshire for corn. They only had 1 factory, so I had to go there through the state of Maine, of course. But so it was. Then I got on broccoli and I inspected the broccoli in the full fry field and Washburn and potato source in Prescott and General Food, Bird's Eye and Caribou. Yeah. So I know Maine quite a bit.
Yeah.
1 year I was in Winthrop, Maine on corn. You had 36 factories in the state of Maine then.
Oh, wow.
Corn and string beans and stuff. Mm-hmm. Now there's no more. Just like dairies. Now we're buying milk. Milk at the store. So things have changed.
Mr. Lopwa's job wasn't the easiest.
Not really. Potatoes was a big schooling. We had a big handbook, and you had to learn all the disease and stuff. Mm-hmm. They had tolerances on different defects and stuff. Yeah. And that was hard. And roguing was a kind of a tough job because if it rained, you had to go in there early in the morning. Then the tops were all wet. And wear some leggings, and then the sun would come out, and then we'd get wet inside anyway. The sun would hit. So we had 9:30. We'd take those off and walking in mud. Sometimes it was like this year. It's full. The bottom of the road full of water. You had to walk on the road. Then you had to dig the mud and carry that out. Your shirt would be all dirty, and then you wander in the field and it start thunder and lightning, and you had to hit the end before you get out.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you were up 2 rows at a time, going
Okay.
back and forth with only 3 or 4 men. And then the next day you'd have to go back, and then we went way down to Hamlin and Eagle Lake and Francis and Fort King. They go over. I know all the farms.
Yeah.
There's no farm that I don't know.
His job was rewarding, as were many.
It's the experience and the people I've met. I've met nice people. Some not so nice, but you accept that. There's some in every town. There's some in every town. And some that they resent you just the way you walk or you look. I don't know.
Well, at the time when I went to school, we used to leave in 1930-something that I was in high school. I never went to high school. After 8th grade, we started the Madawaska Training School for 3 years. That was supposedly our high school. And then we had 2 years normal school, which was like college. So I went through the first year, full year. The second year normal school, they needed teachers badly in the rural schools. So I went for half a year, and then they sent me to a rural school in Senegat, and I taught them. I taught them for the rest of the year. And then I went back to school the year after, and I got my degree. I taught until, I got married in 1946. I was 21 years old. I taught 1 year. I had taught 3 years before that. And then I taught 1 year, and I got pregnant. I was married, and I had always said, when I'm pregnant, I'm going to stay home. So I stayed home. I had 3 kids. I waited until my baby was in kindergarten. So I was 12 years without teaching. And then I started up teaching again for 25 years. With the 3 years that I had taught before getting married. 1 year after I got married, and then the rest of the time I taught in 2nd grade. Well, the lasting memories would be my teaching years, because I really enjoyed it. I used to love that level. They were 7-year-old, 8 years old, and I enjoyed it terribly. I love kids. I never minded getting up and going to school. It was a pleasure for me to go to school. I like my summers though, but even though we'd have to take summer courses to renew our certificate or whatever. So those are the memories, really. Enjoying being with kids.
Jobs have always been scarce in the valley, often pushing people to leave the area.
Yeah, there was no job up here, except the mill. But there was not too many ladies that went to work at the mill. I don't know how many there was, but there was not that much men. But not everybody that could get in either. Not just when they needed some. So they all left. As soon as they graduated from high school, they left for Connecticut.
And my father and mother, they kind of encouraged us to leave, because my father said there's no future here. So he was right in a way, but I hated to leave, but we felt we had to. We were 8. We all left because of the situation with jobs. There was no jobs. And since we were on the farm, there was a big difference. We didn't live in town, so that's the way it was. So my father said, you have to pick potatoes before you can leave. So we picked potatoes and that year, and then my father gave us $100 and we left. Now just think that, $100. Today that wouldn't have taken us to Van Buren.
Yeah, no.
But and then I worked. I went to Connecticut and arrived on a Friday. I went looking for a job on Monday, and I started on Tuesday. And jobs were plentiful. It was such so many people, and there was. If you didn't like a job, you just had to go next door and you'd be there. But now, that's not like that now.
Here we have Ronaldo Morin echoing this theme.
But you more when you had a job. because work was kind of scarce in Madawaska. If you didn't work in the freighter, either you find yourself a job or you move out. And I was very fortunate, to have a chance, to prove myself in the Valley Times. I started as a salesman. Actually, they hired me, a salesman. I was that. Every week I had the area of Madawaska and Edmonton at that time, selling advertising. And also I was the darkroom operator. Now I'm in all done automatic. if you take a picture, you done automatic. At that time, you had to develop your films like an A and B developer. Then you had the one that's very dangerous, and those had two trays. One that developed, the other one was killing the image on the picture. And the reason why you can't see my fingers, I'm in their acid. That's what it is. My fingers are all shut. So that's what I did more or less. And I started as a pressman in the printing shop. And after a while, I was taken out of the advertising, taken out of the road, and I was strictly in charge of the printing shop, which handled all people coming in. Gave estimates on letterheads, 1,000 envelopes, books, magazines, which we printed at that time. And the printing shop was quite busy, so it kept me busy. And I had about 1, 2, 3, 4, I had 6 people working for me at that time there in the print shop. It's good years. I enjoyed the Valley Times very much. Good years.
As is evident, if one could not get into the mill, there were a few other options, but not many. Here's Azilda Leonard speaking about her husband's time working on the railroads.
Well, first he was working for wherever he could get job then, and he was working when we were married for 75 cents a day. It's now 75 cents an hour, he said. And if it rained, he worked there, and then after that, was working for the farmers or wherever we could get a job. But then he started to work on the railroad. And he worked until the railroad, for the railroad until he retired. At first they had each section. So they worked on each section, they was working going up. From St. David to Lille. At Lille, that was another one. But then after that, when they put it all together, he was working he worked in Madawaska. And sometimes, when in the winter time, when they needed men on the rail to go take the snow off there, he would go on the train with the freight train. And besides that, he was working on the railroad. He worked on the railroad until he retired. He had that schedule. He had to work from 7 to 4 o'clock.
Okay. Yeah.
That was every day. That was their schedule every day. Except when there was some washout or something like that, had to be overtime. Yeah, but that just happened when something happened. So when it rained or had a lot of rain and there was one washout on the track and they had to go work. But besides that, they worked from 7 to 4.
Not everyone had a run-of-the-mill job. Lillian Marquis was a dance teacher.
Ballet and tap. It's mostly ballet because they're young and they cannot, they couldn't quite get it.
Yeah.
But I had a boy, he was very talented, and he won prizes after prizes for dancing.
Oh, wow.
So I tried to educate them as much as I could, different things. And the mothers were very happy about that.
Also, Bernadine Sear spent a lot of time decorating cakes.
Cake decorator, 32 years. It's meeting the young couples. That was great. That was nice. And going at the hall and cutting the cake and talking to them. And I always had a special thing for them after I was done the cake. So, to remember me by.
Having grown up in Madawaska, I am very present to the reality which many of these individuals present. It surprised me to learn that even in the past, jobs were scarce, and many people left the region as they do today. Family life is very important to the Madawaska region. With a rich Catholic identity, families were large and spent much time together, especially on Sundays.
I feel about my life, I feel that we had a good start right here with my parents. They taught us how to get along with each other, work together, play together, and pray together, and dance, and we were a musical family. Our house was the meeting place for all of my mother's family. My father was the only one. He had a sister, but she lived in Bedford. She had moved to Bedford. So that's how we grew up, always family and each other, and that helped us. Yeah. And being bilingual also, to me, in my life, helped me. So coming from here, I'm happy I came from here, and that's who I am. And I'm an Acadian at heart.
Our second apartment was in 3rd Avenue. See, like I said, we lived on 5. And then Evelyn and Louise would see other kids go sell bottles, and they'd get money for the bottles, and then to buy candy, naturally. Roland did not want them. He was raised, in the boondocks, and he did not want his kids to do that. He didn't want his kids to turn into town kids, you might say. So that's one of the reasons we moved to the country. And maybe Evelyn was 4, and Louise she was pretty young anyway to follow, to go to the. And I remember when we were here, sometimes I'd bring the kids up on the mountain for a picnic when Roland was working. He was working, so it was nice. A nice summer day, and it was cool. Our first TV was in town, black and white. When we first were born. We were married, and we had it the rest of our marriage, you might say. So the kids would have had cartoons on TV, which I didn't have. No TV then. Yeah, that's one thing. We could play in the barn, in the hay and things. That was close by. But we didn't go to town very often, except, like I said, when we go dancing. I remember going to the roller ice skating.
Okay, yeah.
And it was probably the same place there. They had an ice rink outside before they built the building. And my kids go skating too. They must have. In winter. Winter's long around here.
If you want to live around here, you have to accept the fact that it's a trade-off. And so they put us as number 1, and how to do that when you're 12, 13 people in the house, it was mind-boggling. So I always treasured that. And then going to church, and they were listening to the same message I was, and my most cherished moment was when one of the readings was, fathers, do not nag your children lest they lose heart. And I kind of peeked at Dad. He was the kindest. French men are wonderful to raise girls, especially. And I just thought, not that he'd ever abused the privilege, but it meant that he would never abuse the privilege of being a parent, or not be good for us, and Mom too. And I saw them kneeling beside their bed at night to say their prayers.
I know one thing, but my mother said no. It was no. When she said yes, okay. But when it said no, we wouldn't ask her that, because we knew that, and that's the way it should be. Sometimes it ask my father. He said, go ask your mother. If your mother says yes, she didn't go.
When asked about their Catholic faith, many of the interviewees shared remarks of blessings.
It makes me appreciate what I've had. I've been blessed. I've been in Knights Columbus since 1960, and through my fort in 1962, and I instigated a 4th degree in 1969, and we had 196 candidates, and there was no computer then. It was all done by hand. Yeah. So I think the Madawaska, that degree was the biggest one ever in the New England state. Wow. And they never believed that. 196 candidates. I've done that, and I've been on the parish council.
Well, at that time, everybody was Catholic. Everybody used to go to church.
They're still Catholic, but now, today it's not the same. Half of the people don't go to church. Well, we used to be baptized and First Communion and then Confirmation and then everything. Nowadays it's not the same.
Oh, I think it does a lot. Yes, because they're very, very, word that comes is not a nice word. Brainwashed.
Brainwashed, oh gosh.
Brainwashed into the 10 Commandments and that sort of thing. So it was not a bad thing because the church was not teaching anything bad. Some people criticized it because it was too much, you know, but no. Not in my family. We just grew into that, and that was the way it was, and we never questioned it.
And church is the most important thing in our life.
I see less young kids go to school than we go to church. When I was young, all the kids used to all sit together. We eat with the parents together. We sit together.
The advantage of when I was brought up was that we were educated by religious people, like the nuns, okay? And to keep the thing going, the faith going, we were required to go to confession once a month. We'd line up in church and go to confessional, and that's the way we were required to do. But my family didn't go through that because of the difference of education. Not that they're not educated well, but there was a difference of the lifestyle. Actually, the Catholic faith was there to abide by, and which I don't criticize, I don't blame, but it was a good way of making a living, actually, as far as getting along with the rest of the world, actually. Okay. So that's what it was.
With or without their faith, Madawaska is a region full of helpful neighbors. Here is Patricia Daigle's daughter, who assisted during her interview, speaking about the community support found in Madawaska.
We think it's really strong. I think there's so much support with, and families in trouble with their health or a death in the family. The whole community will come and help, and it's just it's very, very nice to know each other. Everybody knows each other, and it's just a nice community place. Just very close.
Like, we find it strange every night of the week, Monday through Friday, they go to church around here in the evening. And where we live, I don't even know if they have masses. They do, but it's well attended and followed here.
Similarly, as neighborhoods began forming, neighbor relations were positive.
We were new cities, a new town, new one, let's say, not town. I mean, new street up here. And we were all starting our families. We all had kids about the same age. So they were all very friendly and enjoyed the company of it. And the mothers were good. One of them was a good cook from the school. She was working at the school. And so they share a lot, good neighbors. In fact, they still do. They meet each other, they know each other.
Even after people had left the area, the community support did not vanish.
When I graduated, I think we were 42 or 43, and there's very few of us left. But whenever there's one from outside that comes up, and the classmate knows about it, well, probably 3 or 4 around. One finds out about it, we all go to eat. Even there's a few that passed away, and their wives come with us. It's nice. Even this summer we had one that came, and we all went out to eat at Lake View. So we've had class reunions after almost every year.
I spoke with many elders of the community and began to see the effects of children leaving the area. A few of the individuals were located at local nursing homes and could feel the effects of the different lifestyles we have today. 2 interviewees specifically mentioned this reality. Here's Felix Lavoie explaining how elders were taken care of when he was a child.
And my grandmother stayed around quite a while, and she'd go from house to house, just like all her kids. She'd probably stay home a month, then she goes to an uncle and stayed there for another month. And there was no security homes, and she went all around. She only had 2 daughters, but 5 boys, so there was no security home. We just took care of.
Now we hear from Lorette Pelletier, who currently resides at a local nursing home.
We're lucky to have these places now, because years ago they kept their parents in their own homes, and it wasn't well like now. Now we have more leisure time for us. We have help, more help. Years ago we didn't have all the help we have now.
Now we will hear more from musician Mr. Doucette about the atmosphere of dance halls.
I started practicing as I was about 13 years old. And when I got to be able to play a tune fluently or the style of being able to dance on it, then my sister was practicing the keyboard. We started playing together. That's where we started playing at the dance hall. The owner wanted us to start playing for them. Back then, the musicians were not too dependable to begin with. Not that I want to put my father down, or his brothers were playing also. He had two brothers that were playing the fiddle. And they were pretty much, they would indulge quite a bit in drinking. So at first, not too bad, but then like anything else, if you're drunk, you can't perform too much, which is what the problem was. By the late evening, probably at 11 o'clock, 10:30, 11 o'clock, they wouldn't suit it for playing anymore. I mean, they needed a replacement. And that's when the owner got to us. And back then also, during the Lent period, there was no dancing. So the dance hall was closed till Easter, after Easter. Only time they danced, only day was Mid-Lent. Come Mid-Lent, that day they had a dance. And then for another 3 weeks, they'd be closed. And we started back after they resumed playing and dancing. That's when the guy the owner got to my father, and he wanted us to play. And my father wasn't too impressed at that because there was some drinking, but they were not drinking in the dance hall. So it was a separate place, a separate room. It wasn't a restaurant like. But that's how things got. Then I played, starting. I turned. I was going on 16 in August. I started playing in April. Played all the time, all these years for 3.5 years actually, till I got married. Then I quit, and I was glad that I did. Kind of fed up with that lifestyle. Back then, the breathing atmosphere wasn't too healthy either. They'd smoke all over the building. They didn't go outside to smoke, especially during winter. So that was another disadvantage. So like I tell Mom once in a while, we were kind of a strong health-wise to withstand all that abuse and that dirty environment actually. But then I think the tobacco smoke wasn't as bad as today. That's what they claim. But it's still smoke. It was still smoke then as it is today.
Today, Mr. Doucette plays during the local Acadian Festival and for local nursing homes.
It's pretty much the same old thing. Well, the problem is, like it's going to be tomorrow, they're forecasting some rain. So if you start playing with your electronic equipment and it starts raining, that happened in Fort Kent. We played it last week, Crosswing Security Home. And we just played about 15-20 minutes. And it started raining, so we had to put our equipment away. It wouldn't withstand the rain. So other than that, I mean, it's not a job performance where it calls for a lot of time involved on your part. You're like this week, I'm playing for an hour from tomorrow, Thursday afternoon, 4 to 5. Then I'm not playing anymore after that. That's it for my performance. And I was asked to play at the talent show for the Boulders at Madawaska High School. And that too was just a few numbers. Probably 3, 4 in the most. Which doesn't take long, which 15 minutes we're done. So other than that, I mean, the Acadian Festival is pretty much of an interesting thing actually.
Madawaska is loved by its community, and there are numerous pastimes that keep people busy.
It's a very quiet and peaceful town. I would welcome everybody to come and live in Madawaska. It's a very nice town.
Madawaska is home to many outdoorsmen. Its inhabitants enjoy four-wheeling, riding snowmobile, fishing, going up to the lake, or any number of outdoor activities.
One thing for enjoyment that I had, I bought myself a cottage at Long Lake up there. Spent quite a few years. I believe I had that cottage up there for 32 years, I believe. And it's good in a way because all my kids, after they were done with school in the spring, we all closed the door, locked the doors, stayed at the cottage. We spent the summer up there. And the kids enjoyed it very much, too. And those were the good years for me because I enjoyed fishing. Well, ice fishing, actually, you can fish them in the open if you want to, but it's pretty damn cold. But we used to have a little cabin, a hut, built. What we did, and after we put it on the lake, first, before we put the cabin on, we cut a hole about 20 inches wide and about 4 feet in length. Then we cleared that, took the ice out and everything. We had clear water. We had to probably dig about 1 to 2 feet, the ice out. And we put the cabin on top of it. And we all got inside. We had a little stove up there to keep us warm. And we did our fishing.
Madawaska is also home to one of few remaining drive-in theaters.
It was a treat for the kids when we went to the drive-in because there was a canteen and, But otherwise, we didn't go very often, but we'd go once in a while on Saturday night or Sunday night when the kids were younger. And up until age 15, 16, they'd come with us. And then sometimes they had other plans.
One asked about businesses around Madawaska, mixed in with comments about mom-and-pop shops, grocery stores, and boutiques. One could not forget to mention the beer joints.
They had about 10 or 12 beer joints along the main street here in Madawaska. And now we got one only. The women do the shopping and the men hits the bar. That's what they do.
They also had bars. At one time there was like 7 or 9 bars in town.
I think there was a bar at every other building on that sidewalk.
12, 15 beer joints, and now there's only one.
They used to have 21 bars in town.
We had, I think, 13 or 15 taverns, and I think there's only one left.
In Canada, they had you could not have liquor for a while. So, and then the priest would preach in Madawaska and said, the grass is going to grow in the middle of the street because of all those bars. It would be attract God's wrath on the town. You would say, Father Menard, his name was. And, Pepe did not spit in the liquor too. He liked, especially when he was coming out, him and his cronies coming out of work at midnight. They'd stop at the bar, beer, or at least, and chat and try to unwind and things like that. Because there was many bars then. But Roland, my husband, said, no, it's not a place to bring a wife. So he never brought me to a bar. No. He thought the women were too loose or something. I don't know. So there were many bars at some point, but I still, like I said, I was too busy with my kids, the babies there.
I never understood that. There must have been people going in to keep it open because they did stay. There were several things seemed to be working. So although I never walked into one, I guess business was good. I don't know. That's why there were so many.
A lot of workers at the mill would probably go there to wash away their problems. But there was more drinking alcoholics, if you want, than there is now. So that's why the bars have been diminished to the point where it is today.
Many of the people interviewed attributed the number of bars in the area to the local paper mill, which held many workers who needed somewhere to unwind before heading home after a shift. While there is no doubt working at the mill was taxing on the men, it wasn't all bad.
I was a paper inspector at the mill. I really enjoyed it. I used to be with really nice people. I got along with everybody. Everybody got along with me. And I started at the mill, really. I started as a paper boy. I used to run the errands. Then I went into inspector. I didn't really like it. I used to work night shifts. day shift. That's 12-hour shifts.
It appears that many of the workers did not love their job at the mill, but accepted it as it was, a job. Not everyone had intended to work at the mill their whole life, but financially were unable to work elsewhere.
And after I got married, I was planning on quitting the mill, which I despised quite a bit at first. The indoor work to begin with, and working on shifts, and actually, I wanted to quit the mill. So I took a home course, correspondence course for an automotive mechanic. I was planning on quitting the mill, working for local garages in town. So there was this place at the farm machinery dealer in Grand Isle. He wanted me, by all means, to quit my job at the mill. And considering, comparing the benefits there to what I was earning at the mill, it wasn't too much interesting. So, well, almost just half the wages that I was doing at the mill, plus half the benefits also. So I applied at different places. I applied in another dealer in Fort Kent, John Deere dealer, which is, I would have had the job right away. They wanted me to start the next week. And also comparing the benefits. So I decided, I think Mom was praying. Her prayers were pretty much answered then. I had just bought this place here. That's another thing. If I would have gotten a job in Fort Kent, traveled another 20 miles every day. So I decided on letting it be. Then I built the garage and I worked part-time for the area farmers, and that's my story.
Mr. Doucette continues, now going into detail about his work at the paper mill.
Yeah, I was working on paper, repairing. Let's see that you had a paper roll that wasn't sellable, like the mechanical condition of the roll. They sent it over to us. They called that rewinder or salvage winder, and we'd run the roll through, and wherever the mark of the defect was, we'd stop by, tear it off, make a splice, or some other things, conditions where there was an impression on the roll where it was caused by running the whole set, joining with other rolls. So by running it singular on our machine, it would correct that problem. So that's what it was. It was salvage. I started on that second year after I got in the mill. I kept on that. It was a good job. Well, not one of the top paying jobs, but it was good enough for us. But it was only 8 hours a day when I first started, till the end of the last 10 years. They converted to 7-day operation. The guy used to call that miserable shift, that I called it. But I mean, we still worked 8 hours, but there was we worked 3 days, off 2, then worked 2, off 3, and as it went on like this. And we were rotating backwards. Let's see that this week I'd be working days 8 to 4. Next week I'd be working nights 12 to 8. Then the week after I'd be working evenings 4 to 12. That wasn't so bad as compared to that new system, that 12-hour shift that they come up with at the last year. So that's a lot. That was a long day. But we had quite a few more days off compared to what we had on a 7-day operation. We was still having to work anyway. But the last year that I worked at the mill, my machine was the only one running only days, which was 12 hours days. It was 6 o'clock in the morning to 6 in the afternoon. I was working only that shift, that day shift, and it was pretty good. It wasn't so bad as working nights. That was life, I guess.
I put my name there once to work, but apparently I was probably down south somewhere, and I never got the call in there. But I never worked shifts either, which I've been blessed. I always, and in the summer I work outdoors in the potato fields, and out in the open. I went to bed every night. So I I know a lot of my friends work there, and most of them are gone by now, or they're in a home somewhere.
Here's Patricia Daigle reflecting on shift work.
It wasn't too good, but you have to accept it. That was a job, and that was how it worked, and we had to do it. Didn't like it too well. The only work there was to do around here you know, it was, you could get in the mill to work, they were happy and glad to be there. So I think, you know, they all seemed to accept it and like it and stay there.
Others had similar views as Mrs. Daigle.
That was lousy. Shift work was lousy. Yeah, it was hard because I was working too and having a babysitter, and it was rough for a while. But he had 2 jobs. He worked at Fraser's and he worked for a farmer, especially the summer months. Now he was very, very busy.
Now you worked shifts at the mill. You know, that was hard on the system. Men just could not do that. Like his brother, he decided to work day shift, and that was in the yard. So the salaries was not as big, you know. So when they'd work 12 to 8, that was the highest pay per hour. And then 4 to 12 was lower. And then days was a little lower too. So that would change every week. You start, you know, rotate all these shifts. So you never, when you worked 12 to 8 there, you know, it was like somebody coming out of a drunken, you know, his eyes were red and never had any, he could sleep in the noise. That's what saved him. Saved us, I might say. Because sometimes when I couldn't handle Dawn, I'd bring him and put him under the blanket roll and I'd say, hold him! And then he would, and he'd fall asleep. So then eventually Dawn would slip out and he would have calmed down. So, yeah, those shifts were terrible and it lasted a long time. And then eventually they changed to 12-hour shifts. It's not very good either. And then once a month he'd have a long weekend, 4 days off. Yeah, so, but he would say he had a good job but not a nice job, working on machines. And then at the end, you know, it started at 6:10 and work up there. And at the end, it was running the machine. And then they offered him to be a boss, and he said, "No, I don't want to be a boss because that's a good way to get people to hate you." Yeah, that's what they do in that time. So when they decided to turn the machines to electronic or like computer type, that bothered him a lot. He thought in his mind, he said, "Nah, I'm not educated. I'm not going to be able to do that." And that's one thing that killed him. That's when he had his second heart attack at 56. So then he was disabled at age 56.
At times, women would work at the mill, often only until they were married, like Patricia Daigle and Agnes Bullier.
Certain companies wanted certain sizes of papers, and the machines were set up to cut that up. And we had to count to make a 50-page ream package, and that was my job. Well, until I got married.
I immediately got a job at Fraser's. I worked in an office. When I got married, I stopped working there.
In 1968, there was a small strike at the mill concerning wages. A few of those interviewed shared what that experience was like.
I went through there and I picketed, and it's quite a thing. I didn't riot though. I wasn't by it. But what I did, I had this just going then, and I'd be working part time in the garage and for the farmers. So it kept a little bit more revenue coming in. So other than that, I went picketing at night from midnight to I think it was 4. I didn't like it too much, but if I was to have some revenues from the union, they were paying us nothing much. I wanted to have my share of it. I had to go.
And here we have the daughter of Patricia Daigle sharing her memory of the mill strike.
There was just a lot of talk in the town, negativity. My dad didn't go to work. We received food from the government. It came in. We had to go pick it up, and it was like canned beef, and it was just said beef on it. White cans, like I didn't want to eat that. Dog food. Peas, peanut butter, just very simple staples. And so we went to get that, and it's just a lot of uncertainty. Just everybody was very confused. You know, the mill had been there for so long, doing so well, and now this happened. It's like, how can this be possible?
One thing is for sure. While there are mixed feelings about the working environment of the paper mill, it is necessary in the economy of Madawaska, and everyone knows it.
A good thing there is a mill, because there are no other industries except now they have a perfume factory in St. David. But before that, the only place where men could be working or women was the mill. If the mill would close down, this would be a ghost town. And I was looking at the income tax forms. I had kept them all. And the first year he worked at the mill in 1946-47, he earned $1,800. And now they're up to $60,000 and $75,000 and even more.
If the men were employed, they had steady work, and that meant that you had pretty comfortable. For instance, I don't remember ever having to go barefoot. And some people, where they're really poor, you know, they have to go barefoot and all that. I don't remember her having that. Well, it was probably was more comfortable than we would have been otherwise. There was no milk. Oh, there would be a ghost town.
It's a good thing we do have the mill. That's because Madawaska wouldn't survive. I don't think so. To me, anyway, and to a lot of people too, because we do talk about the mill almost every time we go out. Because there's up and down, and But no, it's a good thing we did have the mill, and we still do have the mill. Although a lot of things has changed at the mill, but it's still there. Hope and pray that it continues.
There have been a lot of changes in the town over the past 50 years.
I think the mill had a lot to do with that, because they changed names 2-3 times. People were scared of losing their job. That some of them did the last time, and they had to move out. So there's a lot of houses for sale now. That's a big difference. And people had nice homes, and they had to get rid of them. That's a lot of changes for the town. Makes it hard for the people, for the young ones.
Another topic of note around town lies across the border. Madawaska shares a valley with New Brunswick, Canada, and many residents spend time in Canada, whether shopping, eating, or catching a movie.
Yeah, the bridge was there. I think the bridge is there since the 20s. We were free. We crossed. I was very young now. You could cross by myself. It didn't bother me. So it was more free than it is now. It was just there, and we had relatives over there, but we never thought they were foreigners. They were just there.
They're a little bit better on French than I am, and maybe I'm a little bit better in English, but sometimes they've come a long ways over there too. I went to Montreal once, and I thought, well, I better speak French, but the guy noticed that my French wasn't too good, so he turned to English, and he was better than I was.
Gosh.
It's nice to know both, but I did some jury duty here in Holton once, and there was a guy there, he had his name tag on him, and he had a French name. And I said, you must speak French. He says, no, my parents stole that away from me. And I didn't know what he meant then, but now I realize that I have grandchildren on this side, I have grandchildren in Canada. And the one on this side, they understand it, the older ones. The ones in Senegal, they're in French, they won't speak it at all. And the ones in Edmonton, they're getting to speak English. Or they got the TV, which we didn't have. We used to cross with a dog. We had a dog named Slade. And once my older sister over there, and there was always two of us, and one would have tied the dog to a post there. And when we got back in, one would get in, put a little weight on it because she'd take off to come back. We'd go by custom, the dog wouldn't even stop. We'd just wave at the guy, and it was easy. The guys would just laugh,
I remember Mom used to send us to go get some bananas because they were a lot cheaper on that side than on this side.
Then we had to report. There was a custom in Green River, and there was a custom. At first, I thought at the store that there wasn't going down. They had a big store and they had the post office, but he was the custom officer. That's why we have to go report. And then when in Canada, Ernest, then we had to go report to him. But we know them and they know us. We didn't have to go. It was not strict like it is today.
As time has gone by, and because of events such as 9/11, crossing the border has become stricter.
Story that I got to tell you, a short one. Mom wanted to go shop across, and then they sent us in, along with her sister. And they were both sitting in the rear. There was one turn they wanted me to drive them. They were both sitting in back. When we got to Canadian Customs, this husky guys, anything over? I said, yeah, I got two women. Oh, American over.
Oh, God.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said, no, I said, nothing. But I was kind of insulted to the point where the way he reprimanded me, nevertheless. And he was mad at my response, but come to figure that he was right at correcting me, because that could have been some women, some people that I was abducting across, okay? And he would have, actually, that's what I told him, taken two women, which is what it was. But who were they, or in what situations were I crossing them? It could have been a breach of the law. Later on, they would have been caught, I would have been caught, whatever, and I would have turned around and said, well, the customs let me go.
Yeah,
I told them that I had two women to let me go, which is what wasn't tolerable at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, a takeoff. I was, can you imagine a fucking pig head like that? Can you imagine having to live with a friggin' pig head like that in a house? And just, they were laughing their heads off. So she says, you wouldn't have had to talk properly. There was nothing to say. That it's not a good thing to say to two women. Well, it was true.
Yeah.
It goes to prove the type of, security thing was there.
Mm-hmm.
Same as on this side. I'm pretty sure if I would say that same thing to the American customs over here, probably, unless they know me good, I'd probably be told off like that too. But that's it. But it's not. It's good. It's a way of keeping the lifestyle going properly, and in other words, sorting out the mess that they have to do and they're living through in the city.
The people of Madawaska are products of the rich cultural heritage found in the area.
Well, as we were growing up, my grandmother would always tell us that we are Acadians, and don't forget it.
Yes, I enjoy the festivals, especially the Acadian festivals, because we don't have those. I mean, eventually, in years to come, the French people are going to lose their identity, let's put it that way. And what we want to do, is keep this active. We do that every year. Every year we take one family, we celebrate that family, I believe they went through 14 families, 15 families already, different names. And this year was a bowl year, so the Acadian Festival. We need that, because the kids today, they don't care too much for their French heritage, let's put it that way. And that's why we want to keep alive, the French heritage. And a lot of work to do to keep up that way.
This very heritage is often kept alive in the language and dialect of the area, which is very specific to Madawaska.
Well, I remember once when we were married with another couple at a restaurant in Bangor. I think it was Bangor. And this priest got up, he was eating alone and listening to us talk. When he got up and he walked near our table, then he said, you people you live between Fort Kent and Van Buren, just by our dialect. Yeah, the words that we use, he had studied that. And that's what I tell people, there's no such thing as perfect French.
Yeah.
They had to choose one to teach it in college, let's say, or anywhere else.
Yeah.
They had to choose one dialect. They're all dialects.
Yeah.
And English is the same thing. Yeah. So, if you go up to Fort Kent, Pearly Brook Road, they have a different accent. Different dialect, not all there, but some words are different. Well, see, my mother was Canadian, so I picked up her French. And my father was local, he had the dialect of around this area. Once I went to the hospital in Fort Kent, and this lady had married a guy from Fort Kent, but she came from overseas, I don't know where. Maybe he was a serviceman. And we were together in the same room, and she said, oh, you speak much better French than they do around here. Because I was picking up on her and, improving my French to be able to be on her level, let's say, of conversation. I could do that, I know there's always a better, sometimes we slur our words, phrases, we shorten French, that's local there. Sometimes I notice when I'm doing that. But if I would speak to a priest or somebody who's more educated, I would shape up language-wise. I would try not to use too much dialect. It's like the Cajuns. They were Cajuns. They went to Louisiana, So their French is mixed with English. So people came there or Spanish too. So that's their dialect evolved. You know, it's always changing dialect. Now more English words are being incorporated in our French lingo. For instance, peanut butter, we never said the real word in French. We always said peanut butter.
Oh, okay.
Here in the valley. Yeah, except someone who's imported from Canada, they'll say like, it's a big word. Beurre for butter. Arachide, that's a word, French word for nuts. Arachide.
Okay.
Beurre d'arachide, man, that's a bit too long. Huh?
Yeah.
Much too longer than peanut butter and things like that. You'd have to catch us talking together to find out what we say in our dialect. Yeah, it's common to hear us two. English came, and that's how come we have English now. And now it's English. French is being inserted into the English language. Some words in French. Now.
Yep.
Yeah, we noticed that. School was on down to école. Instead of say à l'école, we're supposed to say to the school. But we short. On va école, you know. Short for it. And things like that there.
For some people, speaking French over English, or vice versa, became a problem due to their conflicted upbringing, which at times stressed one over the other.
I was very shy to speak English because, see, we always spoke French at the house.
It was racism to the ultimate. There was a law that was passed, and that's another thing I fought. In 1919, April Fool's in 1919, in the state of Maine, there was a law that was passed banning French from the schools, except for 2 years of high school French. And if a teacher was caught had allowing any of that French, the child, she could be fired.
Wow.
So my sister was teaching kindergarten in Senegal, where her little kids were coming in monolingual French. And she had a child at the door for the principal, and she had another child at the window for the superintendent, and she'd speak to them in their language. And you have to teach the child in their language to bring them to the other language. You can't just start following and expect 5-year-olds to, you know. So it's all that subterfuge to be able to. So we wanted to stop that.
And so I might not have said a word of French, but I might get called Frenchy, okay? And it's in the inflection and the tone of the voice, where, you know, in French, sometimes the accent is on the end of the word, but in English it's at the beginning of the word. Like, for example, it wasn't Keegan, it was Keegan. Okay? We do that in our common French, so we're giving even our English words a French inflection without even realizing it. And this is why sometimes we're in an entirely English community, we haven't said a word of French, they still give us the look, that question of wonder. And sometimes this is why our young soldiers got to be called Frenchy in the army. So we grow up sometimes maybe having an inferiority complex over the French because c'était pas le français du Québec or whatever. But we were not in a position to explain what I've just explained to you about the origin of my Acadian speech. So sometimes this made many of the mothers of our school children less confident in their French than the mothers from Quebec. So the Madawaska resident who married the nurse from the Edmundston Hospital, il parle français. Parle pas peu de son français. Okay? And the children pick up a different nuance, a different attitude, a different feeling. So sometimes they bring from Canada this competitive attitude, on parle français.
The Madawaska region has its fair share of food known to the area.
They didn't have any fridges then, before I was born. So they'd salt, they put lard and a layer of salt in a barrel, mostly, and that would keep all winter. So when they wanted to flavor a dish, let's say with the cooking, they would take put the meat in water to take out some of the salt, but it was kind of salty. So that was a very traditional food, salted pork. My grandmother, when they would butcher a pig, she liked to eat even the eyes. Oh, my mother was so repulsed by that. And the original croutons, that was made, they called that head cheese. They took out all those bits of meat in the head of the big pork, and that's what they made croutons with.
And of course, like everybody else, my mother always did a lot of canning, and we had shelves and shelves of food in the basement. We always had, that's one thing that was a big difference from here to Connecticut, where they taught us about how they lived. And that's when I found out that it was heaven here. You know, with the food, and they had to stand in bread lines, they would tell me, and no, all we had to do was go downstairs, and there was plenty of food there.
What do we eat every Christmas? We call it sipot. Sipot and tortilla. Tortilla, it's a meat pie. Sipot is a big, what do I say?
All kinds of meat together.
You could have up to 6 kind of meat in that. Layers of potatoes and pork dumplings. And you start over again. And a lot of spice in there.
Acadian tradition. Fiddleheads and put, they call it. And fiddleheads, well, it's something that grows around the river, around water, and it's good. It's like a green. It's like eating Swiss chard or it's a vegetable. And the other meals, well, they'd have meat pies, which is tradition, Acadian tradition. They'd have a put, they call it. There's a layer of meat, all kinds of meat. Rabbit meat, deer meat, moose meat, whatever. And they had a layer of pastry between each layer and potatoes. And anyway, and then they cooked that, and it was part of the meal.
And that was always the meal after midnight mass. Yeah, we'd have put, because it's something that, all right, it's all mixed together, but it has to cook slowly. And the heavenly smell in the house. I remember that better than eating it. The smell in the house of put was just out of this world.
A different meal from what we usually have, but some of them do it, but not very often, and it's prepared very different, of course. But anyways, something good and something.
What's in it? Wild?
There's wild meat, beef. There's moose and all the wild animals that they can gather or they can have to use for that. And you make a meal out of it.
Well, it's actually 6 layers. It's layers. There's a pastry.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there's potatoes, and then there's a meat. And then they put another pastry and a different meat and potatoes. And then there's another layer, and it just keeps going. There's those 6 different meats inside.
And they have clothes with that.
And that we grew up with.
That's
everyone has around here.
Well, it's homemade. It's flour, buckwheat, and water, and baking soda. That's about it. It takes place of bread if you, at that time we had to raise almost every meal because we couldn't afford bread. So my mother would have, because my father would have his own buckwheat field. So all we had to do was buy the flour. So we'd save money on that.
And in the wintertime, we used to, instead of buying real cream, we'd buy a can of carnation milk, put that in the snow, and then we'd open that up and we'd whip that cream to put it with the chocolate cake.
While some individuals spend time away from the valley, countless others have never left. Growing up, many people had little time to be concerned about outside events, but every so often the citizens of Madawaska heard news about the outside world.
Probably learned about it in school, what was going on in the world. Because that was the only thing we had then was the radio.
Yep.
So we'd listen to a few serials on the TV, on the radio every, like once a week. We'd have something going on. Everybody would listen to the radio then, like you see on the TV sometimes.
Yeah.
Little House on the Prairie or something like that. Oh, and I mustn't forget my pen pals.
Oh,
I loved to write, and I'd get letters and I'd answer back, and was nothing like that. All by hand, no typing either. I learned typing in high school, so I'd write to him, and he'd send me pictures, and there was nothing, just because I knew he'd be lonely, and gave him get a letter from home or from somebody. I don't know what they told him overseas. He was there. So that was one soldier. I think he's the only soldier that I wrote to. My other real pen pal was in a hospital for pleurisy. So that's French for water on your lungs, I think. And I think he stayed with that all his life, that condition. And his name was French from Lewiston, he was. So in fact, I don't know if I still have any pictures of them, my pen pals. He's the one that stayed longest. The others would come and, then I'd go to another, I don't know how I found them, I don't know. But I like to do that, writing to pen pals and getting letters.
Countless people were often too busy to spend time reading the newspaper or listening to the radio.
She didn't pay. She was always cooking and cleaning. She's not a news buff. She didn't educate herself enough with it to worry herself. Okay. How about that? She was naive.
No newspaper, just radio. But when on the farm, we had to go to the neighbors to listen to the radio. They had one. We didn't. Yeah, and there was a station there, and she was always turning the dial so you couldn't hear it too much. We were too busy for that. We went to bed early, got up early.
As people got older, they began to encounter many of the events which are marked within history books today, such as the issue of civil rights.
Then we got married in '51, and my wife came with me way down North Carolina. Then we had to get on a boat from Cape Charles to Norfolk to go to Elizabeth City, and it was on a boat then. There was two boats meeting, and there was no bridge.
Oh, wow.
And that was the shortest way south. And the colored people couldn't be with us. I mean, they had to be on one end of the boat and on the other end. On Sunday, I went to church with her, and a little church, Catholic church, and coming back, there was a restaurant there, there's quite a few cars. I said, hey, you want an ice cream? She says, yes. I walked in there, and black, and completely black. And I walked in, they all looked at me, but I had a license from Maine on the car, and she gave me nice double-deckers, and hey, it was clean. And I got along good with the colored people down there. And matter of fact, I think I had a picture. I took a picture of my wife with the little kids on the farm there. They were working for this farmer, and I could feel it. I could feel it, yeah. I'd get up there, let's say I went to this packing house, and they were grading, and it was all colored people working in there, but the man in charge had a little office there, and he had a revolver on his desk. And one morning, in one place, I went in, and they had one of their older guy was laying down on the bags in the car, a reefer car on track, and he was laying down, and one of them came to see me. He said, would you take him down to the drugstore? He's sick. The drugstore was down the road. He said, just give him a ride down, and he says, in front of the drugstore, and he said, you won't have to bring him back, just take him down there. Apparently nobody would do that, and I was white, so I said, yeah, I'll give him a ride. So they carried him, put him in my car, and I rode down there, Temperanceville, Virginia, and he got out. He must have died, I don't know, he wasn't feeling too good. So, I made friends over there, I'll tell you that. Those colored guys respected me for that. But I was not too aware of that then. He was a human being.
Even among the interviewees, a difference in connection to the outside world can be seen. One of the youngest of those interviewed showed a much greater connection to the rest of the world, both as a child and adult.
A lot of us did not like social studies or history. We didn't think it was relevant or pertinent. And Sister Bernard, as a freshman in high school, made it pertinent. I got to see that you had to, if you wanted the world, you had to be part of it, to be involved. And that's how I got in, was her convincing me that history was so important. It was supposedly my generation, we left the cause after a while. And they said, oh, it's because you lost Kennedy, and you lost the Kennedys, and you lost Martin Luther King. And they killed all our heroes, and then we got bitter and we went away. A lot of us did not get bitter and run away. We stayed in our, trying to improve where we were. But it was, and then going to the moon, I mean, that was, because we didn't have TV until we were, I was in the 8th grade. And they had very little. You could, now I'm tuned into MSNBC and all the news and stuff that would have driven me up the wall if I had been a kid. But the only way I could go as a 7th and 8th grader to my neighbors, the person who was our Happy Family 4-H Club leader, to watch TV is if I went during the news at 6:30 to 7. I was allowed by my mother to go watch the news. That was the last thing I would have wanted to watch, but I fell in love with it.
The individuals I spoke with have witnessed so much change throughout their lives. Most saw Madawaska turn into the town it is today, watching their farms become neighborhoods and their schools become hospitals. But in the end, most would not have it any other way.
No, things have changed quite a lot. As a matter of fact, I used to say, my generation is a generation that changed the most things compared to the generations before. But in my generation, everything was new. I guess more parents knew how to read, and more parents knew how to,
I thought that history would help me understand how things came to be and why things are what they are today. I'm not certain now, and as a senior citizen, that really works. I sometimes call myself a 20th century person who has outlived his century. But we live today, don't we? Maybe each generation reinterprets all of its history.
If the whole people, like my grandmother and all that, would be alive today, I think they wouldn't be able to understand the people now. Oh my God. And they have 2 grandchildren. It's awful. The way they fall in. But enough is enough. They have everything. Everything. Oh, I can't tell you. You won't believe it. Even if I tried to tell you, you wouldn't believe what they have.
Well, things change.
Well, you can't say it was the good old days, because there was problems then too. It was all, nothing's ever rosy completely.
Been here all your life?
Seems to be okay, because I've been here, didn't move out. And I accepted everything.
I think I was happy living here. Don't know anything else. Never lived anywhere else.
I was very anxious to grow up and get out of Dodge, I thought. And I was lucky. When I went to Massachusetts, I was 19. I went on a bus. They dropped me on the convent was like on a hill, and I was going to board at the convent teaching them. The convent was on a hill. They dropped me in front of a bar. And this man and woman came out of the bar, and the woman was just as drunk as the guy. I was appalled. Women around here don't get drunk. I mean, my day, never saw a drunk woman. So I thought, how naive am I that I've never seen a drunk woman? So I walked up the hill, and the convent was right next to these huge apartment buildings. The noise, TV blaring, screaming. We always lived in a house away from everybody. And not knowing everybody, I decided I wanted to stay here forever.
I feel safe here, and I really, really love Madawaska.
As is evident, the people of Madawaska and its surrounding areas are happy with a life well lived, and count their blessings rather than dwell on past problems. While to some, Madawaska is a typical small town, in reality it is so much more. It is a culturally Acadian town with a history that lives in each of its residents. It is a town which can be driven through in less than 10 miles on Route 1, yet has its own specific dialect. It is an area in which a girl of the current generation can identify with individuals who are in their 70s and 80s because she grew up in the same area. The eldest of those interviewed shared how much Madawaska has changed since she was a young girl. But there is no denying the traces of the past which still remain in the region, and which are etched in the hearts of those who have experienced the simplicity of growing up in Madawaska. Thank you for listening. This has been Life in the Valley, a podcast by Lisa Sidawa. I wanted to thank all who helped me in producing this podcast. To all of those I interviewed, thank you for sharing your stories. To the Mercyhurst University History Department, thank you for providing me an environment which sparked an interest in oral histories and stressed the importance of local history. And to the Madawaska region, without which there would be no basis for this podcast.